Okay, I think we are ready to go. Thanks again for joining us today. In this session today, we are going to chat about platform engineer patterns for scalable software delivery. Before discussing what that means and give the chance to our panelists to introduce themselves and start the discussion, I'd like to just do a very quick and brief couple of housekeeping rules. We are scheduled to go about 60 minutes. That includes the discussion, includes any question, but please don't wait till the last minute to submit question. Ask question at any time, whenever you feel. Just drop a question. I'll make sure to bring them to the panelists. So don't just wait, and we'll sort them out in the background and we'll make them our discussion lively. Before starting, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today, Harness, for sponsoring this session. And before introducing today's panelist, I would like just to give a couple of words about today's topic, platform engineer patterns. So we say, okay, today we don't discuss directly AI, but as our software system growing complexity, engineering organizations tend to adopt platform engineering. We would like to understand why and what does it take to architect a successful IDP, internal developer platform. My name is Renato Losio. I'm a cloud architect by day, so I'm a practitioner myself. I mostly work with AWS stuff, and I'm an editor here at InfoQ, and I will be the moderator today for the panel. We are joined today by 4 experts coming from different companies, different country, different sector, different backgrounds. And we'll discuss today the core components of modern platform, the role of platform teams, and how to measure success and strategies. And we discuss failure story, maybe, personal story, things that hopefully our practitioner will enjoy. I would like to give the chance to each of our panelists to introduce themselves and share their journey in platform engineering. So I would like to start, I would say, in alphabetical order. Maybe Boyan, you would like to go first?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Renato. Hi, everybody. My name is Boyan. I'm the CTO of Sixt. A few words about the company. We're a global rent-a-car mobility provider. We are offering different services in over 100 countries. Helping people move in the most convenient way for them. Before joining Sixt, I've spent about 12 years in different startups, and this is when I guess I first got in touch with platform engineering. Over at Sixt, we are now on our 10th year of our platform engineering journey. We have about 40 platform engineers who are supporting a tech team of 800. Across our backend, mobile, web, data, and back office platforms. And I guess over the course of those 10 years, we've definitely made quite a few things right. We've had our fair share of mistakes, me personally included. And yeah, happy to share some of those experiences.
Thank you, Boyan. I think going alphabetically, next one should be Kat.
Hi, yep. I'm Kat Morris. I work at Syntasso, which is a startup based out of London, and we have built Kratix, which is an open source platform framework. So all about how to do platform engineering at scale. Before that, I worked at ThoughtWorks for 4 years as part of the enterprise modernization platform and cloud service line. So working really closely with platform engineering teams to figure out and scale their platform. Both of those roles as product manager. So my interest in this area is platform product management and how you can use product management techniques to scale your platforms.
Thank you so much. I think next one is Martin.
Hi, sure. So I'm Martin. I'm a field CTO at Harness, where we really have a software delivery platform that kind of helps people, take out a lot of the toil and manual steps from kind of code all the way through to production. The thing that actually brought me here, though, that brought me to Harness in the first place was, I know it feels a long time ago now. I was a software engineer for 20 plus years, and then put my first product in the cloud, which kind of switched me over to DevOps because I had to operate it. And then over the following kind of 10 years, we took this journey of, putting another 40 products in the cloud. That DevOps became platform engineering. as we built out the platform for our product, you know, for those products to be deployed at. And it really kind of changed my trajectory, because a lot of what I was doing was helping engineering teams, you know, really adopt a platform and push it forwards, you know, and be able to use it easily. And so, you know, when I had the opportunity to come and join Harness, to just spend my entire time helping teams do that, that was perfect for me.
Thank you, Martin. Mike, I think you are the last one.
Hey, save the best for last, as always, right? Hi, alphabets work this way, so no shade to anyone. I'm Mike Fiedler. I live in New York City in the United States. I work at the Python Software Foundation as the sole PyPI safety and security engineer, helping secure the Python package ecosystem and registry from account takeovers, malware, and this is a wonderful spot in open source that I've been doing for the last couple of years. But over the past 30 years, I've been working at a variety of startups and enterprises, from 6 people around a table to 50,000 person corporations, in the field of systems administration onto DevOps or platform, and have managed teams, have been a contributor on these, and just kind of fluctuated back and forth. In the last couple of years, I've very much been enjoying working in the open source space. I'm excited to talk about some of the experiences I've had in platform engineering, encouraging adoption, and maybe some of the failures if we get to it.
Thank you, Mike. Discussing your actually adoption, when I had probably 10 different definitions of platform engineering from 10 different people in my life. And still today, I'm not 100% sure that I know what I mean by platform engineering, but we'll get to that. I like actually to start with a bit more of my main challenge when I start to work with and discuss platform engineering is, when do I know that I'm ready or I need to build a platform versus just using some external tool or do nothing, or just I don't know if who wants to start first? Maybe Mike, as you're just talk, if you want, if you have any advice or any.
I mean, I'll take a start. You kind of nailed the big question on the head, is what is platform engineering, and the definition will change. Any one of us will give you probably a slightly different definition. Same thing with DevOps or system administration, or any term that our industry has not codified in in stone. But generally speaking, my understanding of platform engineering and the teams that I tried to build were at a scale at which the developers in the software engineers, developers, and product owners in the company are feeling constrained by not being able to focus on parts of their pipeline delivery in order to execute the company vision. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you're the sole developer at a company, and it's a small company, and nobody is pressuring you to deliver 5,000 new features a week, you can afford to own your infrastructure and build out, I want to deploy this service on this server this way. You add another person to that team, now you have to coordinate and you have to agree upon how you do things. You have to codify that. Add another 2 developers to that team. You have to keep more people in synchronization. You have to keep more systems in synchronization as your footprint grows. So the adage of the platform engineer is basically another layer of abstraction between the software developer and the compute that they need to run on, or the resources that they might need to run on. So it's that old adage of, you can solve any problem in software with another layer of abstraction, except for too many layers of abstraction. So I think it's when you've realized that it is time to abstract away some of these concerns or competencies away from people who maybe aren't the best at it, or have no interest in it and have interest in other areas, that's when you want a platform engineering team to kind of manage that abstraction layer to enable those other folks.
I think I'd add there's sort of another layer on top of this as well, around the common capabilities in your organization. So it might be that something's very painful for that team, but they're the only team that are going to do it ever. At that point, it's probably not worth it to invest in a platform engineering team, because then you're just essentially making that one team larger. So if you've got a bunch of teams that are doing something very similar and isn't really adding to that like end user customer value, that's when platform engineering teams can really shine.
Thank you, Kate. Boyan, what's your experience with that? I mean, you mentioned a quite large team that you. So I wonder, when did you start to think about that?
When we had a problem. So for us, we didn't start with, hey, what is the latest buzzword around DevOps and finding out a platform engineering, let's do that. It was more like at Sixt, we serve, as I mentioned, customers in over 100 countries, and that comes with a lot of different expectations, starting with how our customers want to be served and what kind of experience they're seeking, but also, as you can imagine, 100 countries bring a lot of different compliance and governance complexities in terms of what you're building, how we're integrating it, etc. And that's all something that our engineering teams had to deal with and focus in the past. Plus, because they were running in a you build it, you run it mode, they also had to deal with how they deploy their applications. And that was breeding fragmentation. That was basically causing a lot of different technologies to be put in the mix, essentially kind of doing the same thing, which they also had to take care of. So we wanted to solve for focus, and we wanted to solve for improving, in the end, our customer experience and focusing on our internal business. And therefore, we started investing in reducing this fragmentation, in figuring out which are basically, also as Kat mentioned, the common denominators there between all those engineering teams. And that's how we started our platform engineering journey, by solving this problem. And then we saw that we're getting a lot of extra benefits from that direction. So we started doubling our bet, increasing its footprint, moving beyond what I guess traditionally today, when we speak platform engineering, most people take a combination between backend deployment platform plus all your CI/CD bits, plus maybe some back office front ends to manage it all. We ventured into web, into data, into mobile, and full-blown internal back office, hundreds of different internally facing back office applications, not only technology facing, but also business user facing. And so far, it seems to be paying off pretty well.
Interesting.
Thank you, Boyan. Martin, good.
Yeah, I was just going to say there were some words in there that I picked up on specifically because I think they overlap. And so, like, often my experience has been that like complexity in individual products and services is definitely a driver, because you have teams that are spending time maybe building infrastructure, deploying, etc. That is often a driver for like, we need to reduce the complexity so they can spend time building products, not building infrastructure. So I think that comes up quite often. I also think those commonalities that when you start to see that you have more than one team doing the same thing but all doing it differently, that is not a great use of time, because essentially you're reworking. So taking that kind of almost that product style view of saying, hey, here is a common thing that we are doing, then the outcome is a common outcome, but how do we do it in a way that is easy to consume and makes it easy for the engineers so that they can focus more time on building products. Because generally, and the bigger the organization, the more those complexities show up. But generally, people want their product teams to be building products. And, that's where really you start to say, well, how do we take away some of those pains to help them really drive a shared experience? And there's a whole other piece as well that I would add on the back, which is, the more complexity and variation that you have, and that doesn't mean you can't have variation inside your platform, by the way, but the more variation that you have at the back end, that's the more management that you need to do. You don't always get the economies of scale in terms of costing and the savings that you might do if you consolidated some of those approaches. So, and there's a whole thing about adoption that I hope we'll get to later, but there's, those are all drivers, and often, seeing how much time is spent in those different things is a really good way to say, this is something we should probably pull out and do in a shared way. And here is another thing that we should pull out and do in a shared way, because the overall benefit outweighs any individual, individualism that the teams might want. And you want to have this kind of freedom with guardrails approach, I think, which would be my generic approach to enabling a platform.
Thank you, Martin. Actually, I was thinking that just a few days ago, I read an interesting article from Google that mentioned how they do platform engineering at Google. And one of the advice they had was like, oh yeah, tailor platform engineering for each business unit and application to achieve the best outcomes. And I thought, yeah, well, that's pretty cool for Google. I was wondering, I mean, in my day life, working with companies that are scale that are much smaller, when I think about company of like 50 people, 50 developer, 50 practitioner, whatever, where do you find the sweet spot? I don't know, is because Boyan, for example, mentioned his case, and that's already quite a big one, I guess. But I don't know, Mike, what's your experience, for example, playing with companies? Where do you, because I don't want to build a tool for every developer, more or less.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a kind of an interesting perspective, because we all read articles written by very large companies, but like Google, and say, oh, we should do what Google does. And then we forget that we don't have the money that Google has, we don't have the personnel that Google has, and we also don't have the constraints or demands that Google has, right? Like, so I think a lot is often lost in contextualization of what these solutions are and whom they are for, and when is the right time. So when, you know, Martin talks about like reducing duplication, or Kat mentions like getting, you know, product outcomes to users, I think that comes back to what incentive does this company have? Like what are they trying to do? And if you're trying to be in compliance, then you need a compliance team. And that's where platform engineering can very much offload a lot of concerns by saying, hey, we figured out a way to maintain compliance via software development. Do these steps in our process and you will be in compliance. And if you avoid these steps, you are now non-compliant, right? So that's one concern, and that's an incentive for a startup that maybe hasn't reached levels of compliance that they are necessary for regulation, or are electing to defer that till a later date. May choose scale, right? Or developer velocity or deployment velocity. So we often think about like the cloud as this utility function, right? We get compute that historically I had to order from a hardware provider, wait 6 weeks until it got to my data center, rack and stack it. And then at the end of all of that, I would still plug it into power. That was a utility from somebody else. I didn't have to manufacture my power. I didn't have to manufacture my air conditioning. That was a utility function. Now the compute part is a utility function that many of us take advantage of by saying, I'd like to make an API call and I get servers instantaneously and I can continue to scale. Platform engineering is another concept that could be part of this utility function. When software developers inside of a company say, I have an idea, I'd like to throw it in front of customers in order to validate whether this idea is a good one or not, or like, do people like it? The faster they can do that, the better, because then they can learn whether or not this was a good idea or a bad idea. Do people like it? Can we make money? Are we reaching our incentive? So turning platform engineering into a utility function of an organization gives them a leverage of scale that an individual team doesn't have to consider. How do I deploy a new idea, a new application in front of customers very quickly while maintaining compliance and security and having cost management and all the other parts? Oh, I have a platform engineering team that helps me do that. That's a lot to take on and a lot of responsibility for a platform engineering team. So I think starting at a smaller level, you look at what are the friction points and incentives in the organization and say, what can I save here? Where can I get leverage? Do I need platform engineering team to also own end user authentication? So it'll be an internal like SSO service, and then federate those between services so services and teams don't have to invent one or have security concerns. It's just plug into the thing that we already have and you will probably do fine. Now, I think there's a flip side of that, of folks saying, you know what, I'm bespoke, I'm too special for the platform engineering. You have a generalized solution that doesn't work for me. And I think that's a valid statement that always has to be backed up with some evidence and say, yeah, just because you don't like it doesn't mean you get to opt out. But if you do have distinct concerns or constraints that a platform engineering team is not yet able to provide you service with, then that's okay, I'm diverging from that proven
It's a very
path.
good point that
Yeah.
will come back with my $1 million question in a second. In the meantime, I see there's a question from the audience that is, what role will deploying platform based on cell-based architecture? It's interesting. To perhaps achieve product versus cost effectiveness. Who wants to go first? Does anyone has any advice or wants to comment?
Oh, what I
Martin?
would say is that cell-based architecture, that I don't think it specifically breaks from a platform, and it depends what you're calling your platform and your landing zone, right? Because, you know, my experience was housing multiple products in different verticals with different compliance requirements. You know, things like healthcare versus education versus, you know, finance. They all had slightly different regulatory requirements, auditing requirements, and, you know, those kind of things. However, you know, just because you have a platform, it doesn't mean that you can't have those isolated type cell-based architectures, right? You can still have them isolated. They can still have their own CI/CD pipeline, even though it might be based on a templated pipeline. You know, so for example, for CI/CD, you might say, here is the template to deploy to that architecture, right? And there's some places you can expand on it, but it's your implementation of that template. Right, so you have your commonality, but you also have your uniqueness, and I think those two overlap. In terms of costs, generally, you know, when you're doing something at scale, you get the benefits of scaled pricing, right? So if you're deploying lots of services in similar architecture, you know, base architectures, whether that be Kubernetes or, you know, serverless functions or whatever that is, when you're doing that at scale in a common way, that means that you can drive those discounts and the cost savings and everything else. And as long as you have a really good way in your platform to be able to say, this cost belongs to this product, then you can really show those two and say, hey, do you know what? You just added this ridiculous queuing system into your thing, and it's added this much cost into your, you know, deployed item in the platform, you know, because you decided that you wanted to have something that was huge, right? And so I think there's a balance there, but, you know, generally a platform would give the right visibility and everything else, and still give the freedom for those kind of cell-based architectures while being compliant with those targeted landing zones.
Thank you, Martin. Actually, I have myself a very different question. I don't know, maybe Kat wants to take that one. What's one thing you would have done differently when starting with platform engineering?
I really like this
What's
question.
the most common as well? Another way to see it, what's the most common mistake you see on people starting with platform engineering?
So I see it all the time, and I used to do this all the time myself as well, and that was starting with the day zero experience. So by that I mean like deploying something brand new for the first time. I have never seen a platform engineering team be spun up in an organization where they are starting with nothing. There's always a team that's doing something already. You're already deploying things in some way or some form. It might not be scripted or it might not have CI/CD, but you're already starting from somewhere. And how often are people actually spinning up new things? Maybe you're a super amazing organization that's creating a new product every week and flinging it out there. Chances are you aren't, though. I've not worked with any of those, but I work with a lot of like insurance companies and financial services organizations where there's a lot of stuff already. So thinking about maybe a slightly different way of how do I upgrade and maintain the things that already exist? Is there a way of getting those services onto the platform with some sort of abstraction layer in between so that you can carry on doing what you do in a way that makes sense to you as a development team, but under the hood, you're now more compliant and that's owned by the platform itself. So you're sort of treating it like a different model of how do you upgrade and move in the future. Like why this has gone wrong so much for me is you invest all this money and effort into a use case that happens far more infrequently than those change cycles. And it just meant that we didn't have that ROI for the platform team as effectively as if we'd thought about how do we upgrade, how do we patch, how do we maintain these things going forward, and how do we consume more of those existing services onto the platform.
I actually noticed Boyan nodding.
Yeah,
I was wondering, did you start from scratch as well? No?
It's always a blend, right? We did a lot of things from scratch, quite frankly, but we also took with us things that used to work well. But yeah, I do not, because I do agree, not defining the ROI in the very beginning is also one of the biggest mistakes I keep seeing as I talk to folks. And I would add to that, not getting top management, executive leadership involved on this mission with clear measurement of what success and what failure means. Often, and honestly, it has happened to me so many times when I attend to some of those more open roundtables. I would listen to a story that usually looks something like this. So in company X, we would have this issue with complexity, every team doing their thing, and that's slowing us down. And therefore, we got this mission from a VP of engineering or the CTO to create this platform team, which kind of solves it. And solving it would mean, as an example, we would be running 10 different message buses in this company. And we've agreed that we're going to build this 11th, which is going to kind of become the one, and it's going to solve it for all. And that's the mission of the team. That mission is only known to this team alone. And they start building something, and there is no step two. There's literally no step two. And then in our discussions, it will be, hey guys, how did you solve for this problem? And I would usually go with, well, that's the wrong way to start to begin with, because there is no well-defined success here. Everybody is busy, right? Business teams and big companies especially, they're not slow because people are just slow in execution. They just have a lot of things to do. And migrating off whatever they're using and has been working for them in the past is also something that has to be planned, and it has to lead to a bigger outcome. In other words, this needs to be part of a common company mission. We're doing X, the ROI is clear, and we're all on this boat, and we're doing it, right? Otherwise, what tends to happen is a well-intended platform team, or however you call it, ends up with building just the one more fragmentation into a very fragmented landscape already. And there is zero adoption. Maybe you'll have one POC or two POC teams which were gracious enough to test your technology, but there is no strategy how you go from 2% to 100. And that's when a lot of those initiatives die, because within a year or two, somebody checks, hey, what's happening with this project? Nothing. Let's kill it and start from scratch. I've seen that so many times.
Martin?
Yeah, no, I love this, and I genuinely have seen some really great examples of this. And I think when I was listening to Kat too, that some of those things she's saying just massively resonated. So, worked with a couple of organizations, one of the largest banks in the UK, and they took a day two approach rather than a day one approach to designing and building their platform. And some of the things that I think, they tried to take that product management approach too. So they spent time, they had the management sponsorship from above, but they also needed to get groundswell from below. So they engaged with a lot of the teams. They talked about what they needed, what the outcomes they needed were, and they kind of built the platform with them, if that makes sense. And then the way they had these very specific targets, hey, we're going to get 500 of our 9,000 engineers on version 1 of the platform because we're going to meet their outcomes. And they spent lots of times doing like communications with the engineers as well. Hey, this is what we're building. Are you excited by this? Does it meet everything you need? So really applying those kind of product style things to it. And then that became, hey, now we're going from 500 to 2,000. Now we're going from 2,000 to 5,000. Now we're going from 5,000 to, hey, we want everybody on this, right? And that didn't mean that they didn't have, everybody was deploying to exactly the same target infrastructure, because they're a big bank. They had a lot of target infrastructures, but what they had was a common platform that allowed a good, audited way for them to get to production. And in a bank, it really does have to be audited and meet lots of stage gates. And I can see Kat nodding to that. It really has to go through all those processes. But what they did is they did it in a way that, they had the sponsorship from above and they were removing the blockers, but they were also building the groundswell. They were building the adoption, and they were building, how do I get my app onto here? you know, and I've seen that done even when I was still working personally in that side. We were literally like, okay, we've got like 40% of our apps that are deployed to something that looks like this architecture. So how do we build some automation that says, if you can tick box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can onboard you onto the platform, right? That's kind of where we went, so that we had a path for them to get there. And, you know, you have to clearly articulate those benefits. Hey, we're going to do all the security scanning that you need. We're going to make sure you have all the auditing that you need. We're going to make sure that you have silent deployments. Actually, we're going to make sure you can have canary deployments or blue-green deployments, and they're an option that is available to you in that platform. You don't have to build them, but you just have to meet these 5 criteria if you're deploying to, I don't know, EKS on AWS, as an example. And then we just extended out those landing zones and repeated those processes.
Thank you, Martin. Mike, I see there's a question from the audience. One is how to address the issue that some teams remain strongly attached to past work and are resistant to rework or refactoring. That I think goes even farther than platform engineering, but
I mean,
I don't know if you have
this is
any any advice.
This is like into the depth of human nature and how to affect positive change or influence change that you want. And I am not a behavioral psychologist or anything like that, but having managed lots of teams and gone through a bunch of different experiences with change management, I think one of the biggest learnings, and this also dovetails into that previous question, what do I wish I had done differently? I think understanding why you're doing this is key. And very often there's a platform engineering lead, and then there's some platform engineer contributors, and the contributors are doing something for some developers that are like 3 steps away and may not have direct interaction or influence. So getting crisp on why it is you're doing something and having that written so that everybody can get on the same page is important, to also then turn that around and look at other individuals in an organization and say, this is what we're doing. Does this not match with what you want? If this isn't what you want, then let's talk about what it is you want. To somebody who is kind of attached to the old way, right? I've always tried to maintain, like, the only constant in an organization is change. If you stay still, then you will fall behind. So we are going to change. It's how are we going to change and what are we going to change? So when it comes to folks who aren't happy or excited about change, then I start to pose the question of, well, what is it about the change that you don't like? What is it that is holding you back? Are you perceiving this as harder, more work? Then maybe I need to do a better job of storytelling of, by adoption of this practice, you no longer have to do these 10 other things that you used to have to do. And kind of finding the value. For a team that are kind of resistant, maybe their way is better. Maybe it is compliant. Maybe they can achieve those goals in their manner. And then it's not on the platform engineers anymore. It's on that team to kind of prove that they are compliant and within the company's orders and regulations. Other than that, if they still are maintaining non-compliance, it's no longer the platform engineer's job. It's now kind of an HR problem, and kind of these people are no longer, doing what the company wants to do, especially if the platform engineering team does have that executive level buy-in of, here's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
I feel like it's the hotel and the house thing. It's like, hey, we in the platform engineering team, we've built this amazing hotel with all these different kinds of rooms that you can come and stay in. We'll take care of all the utilities and the power and the, okay, you don't get to choose to paint the walls pink, right? Or whatever it is that is your particular thing. However, you can choose not to be on the platform, but then you're building a house and you have to do all the foundations. You have to, make sure that you have all the power and light and water, and you have to make sure it's stable and it's not going to fall down and all of those things. And they're your responsibility as a team. So, just so we're clear, you can do that. You're not going to get extra people to do that, but you're responsible for all those things versus, come stay in our nice hotel. And yes, if you build the house, you can paint your walls pink, and that is absolutely fine if that is your choice. But you are responsible for the build and maintenance of that. And the way I've seen that played out in organization is often, especially product-led organizations, is, generally product has a certain amount of resource and people. And it's like, hey, you could invest 3 people from your team to building this house, or you could have half a person that's responsible for making sure it can be deployed to the platform. So do you want to build more product, or do you want to build your house? Right. And so you kind of have that balance, if you like, because, then what happens if they don't do that, then they're not getting all those nice new features out as quickly as the product teams that are.
One little bit that I want to kind of just dovetail. I love the hotel house metaphor. The part of that metaphor that breaks down for me is that the person coming into the house or the hotel, the decision, they actually have the ability to influence the hotel maker in this analogy of, hey, I'd love to move into your hotel, but I need the walls to be pink, right? As opposed to your traditional hotel that's not going to take your request at face value at all. But inside of your organization, because it's not a third-party utility company, you do have the ability to influence and discuss with your platform engineering team of, here's how we'd like to shape the product.
Maybe
Honestly,
I add just one other dimension on this. Well, collaborating on that level and discussing the colors of the walls is in some cases worth a discussion. I would also say, if you do start this mission with an intent and you are solving for a real problem, a good escalation has always helped in my experience, because there are certain levels where we could argue to that if one likes chocolate or vanilla ice cream, and we will not settle it. And a platform engineering team will never settle that with certain other product engineering teams. That's just the facts of life. And this is where in my experience, the fastest way to resolve it is a leadership intervention, which usually goes with, in this company, for the greater good, we are gonna go with vanilla ice cream, and Mandalorian style, this is the way. And you save months of backs and forth and discussions and meetings, because in the end, often enough, they're just a person in the room who can make that decision. There are always gonna be certain flavors of expectations and options and small roadblocks. For me, as long as we're not talking about the fundamental departure of the experience or what this team fundamentally is trying to do, but it's really talking about what kind of colors we're going to pick for this room, this is not worthy of continuous discussions and months of time lost. It's more worthy of quick escalation and hopefully a resolution. And if the organization is set on that mission, I think it always works pretty well. On the contrary, if it is not, then, well, that's one massive roadblock of many to come, quite frankly, in my experience.
Thank you, Brian. Kat, anything to add?
Oh, you're quite hard to hear, Renato. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
A little
I-
bit.
I was just interested, Kat, in whether, like, how you deal with that from a product, like, product as a platform perspective. How would you deal with that? Because that feels like it's uber relevant, because generally, if you're not treating platform as a product, then you're probably missing a trick.
Yeah, I think so when I've built platforms, I tend to focus on particular archetypes and particular problems that I'm dealing with. So it will be certain sections of the business. So if people aren't super interested, that probably means that the problem you're solving for isn't super painful for them. And that's kind of okay. It depends on what thing you're building at that point in time and what I think everyone on the call so far has mentioned, the real ROI that you're trying to see out of the platform and the real change and the benefits that you're trying to get. So sometimes I'm kind of okay depending on what the mission is. And I also like to remind people, and maybe this is a bit producty and a bit less technical, is the human psychology behind it. So there are lots of different type of risk takers in a business. And your early POC customers are going to be those early adopters who are kind of happy to give everything a go and hack it together. And if it breaks, they'll give you feedback or try and fix it themselves if you've got some sort of inner sourcing model. It can be very, very powerful to focus on those early, but trying to make every development team in your organization fit that profile is just going to lead you to a world of pain. So maybe they need to see more evidence in that your platform is working for a particular team. We do this a lot in like marketing and things like that, as well as you need proof points. You need customers showing that they've used your product and shouting about the benefits they've got for someone to feel confident in it. So you can't just say like, you have to join the platform. The benefits of why they're going to join the platform have to be there too. And if those teams are like, those benefits don't matter to me, I've got Sarah over here who knows compliance really, really well, and she's just looking after it for me, and we're compliant as a team, maybe that's okay for them until you find a pain point that they're willing to address. Or there's sufficient number of people, your product is so mature that you've moved into like maybe from the early adopters to those late adopters. And that's when you can see a lot of benefit too. Sometimes it's just a bit of patience and a bit of time. So yeah, I like often that gets forgotten in these numbers. You're trying to be too aggressive with your targets.
Thank you, Kat. I actually have a follow-up question. I was thinking in general is, until now, we have mostly agreed on everything. I was wondering if there's any difference, like, for example, how do you measure a successful platform? Do you have any specific metric that you look long-term, apart from, adoption, I guess? But how do you evaluate? Because you might have some skeptical developers. We say you might not want to adopt it. You might prefer the world to be green versus yellow. I can't remember the colors, but how do you decide? I mean, you might have as well the one that, he jumps on the bandwagon. He has to do it, so he does it, but maybe his velocity or his productivity went down. So how do you actually measure the success of a platform engineering project or a platform in general?
Shall I start with my big failure? So on like my second product management gig on a platform, we were trying to figure out this, and we went through all of the NFRs or non-functional requirement types and essentially picked 2 or 3 metrics from each of those areas of like, what would a secure platform look like? Let's put 2 metrics of that. What would a scalable platform? Let's put 2 metrics of that. And it absolutely failed because none of those measures moved at all. Like 0 improvement in any of these. I think we had like 24 different metrics that we picked that we thought were important, and because the leadership couldn't agree. They were like, this is important to me, this is important to me, it's all important, therefore we should measure it all, and we should judge the success of the platform based on all of these measures improving, which means none of them improved. So I know you said like, oh, is it just adoption? For me, yes. I think until you reach a certain level of platform maturity, just getting people onto the platform and just getting them to trust it and to use it and to see value in it, I think that can take you a long, long, long way. Because often those teams themselves will be thinking about those other metrics around, is it done fast enough? Am I secure enough? Am I reliable enough? And if you don't hit those things, they won't join. So it's almost like that North Star, which is something that gets spoken a lot about in product management of like, what is that one thing that you want to see change? What is that behavior that means that you're being successful? And I think adoption is one of those key behaviors. The only downside, you have a limited number. So I like to remind people this on platform teams is that you are not, I think, was it Mike saying you're not Google? You don't have 2 billion people using your platform. You have the 2,000 engineers you have in your organization. So at some point it does dry up and become less effective, and then tends to be those boring business metrics of, is it saving us money?
Thank you, Kat. I'm actually happy to know I'm not the only one dealing sometime with projects that have hundreds of considered KPI. So how can be key KPI when you have not 2 or 3, but 100? Anyway, Boyan, I don't know if you had the same experience, if you measure it in any other way, or if you just measure adoption in your case, or if you have any advice in that sense.
We went, well, for several years by now, we are at 100%. So we don't measure adoption. There is nothing but the platforms, so to speak. Therefore, what we do measure is from certain, well, the one and only metric which is evergreen is availability, right? Because if that starts dropping for certain parts of the platform, obviously big issues. But other side, we obviously look at that point at the different experiences for the different parts of the platform. We try to optimize based on the feedback that we get. And within that, we basically combine multiple approaches, right? For sure, certain pieces are part of our NFRs. We also go for specific dedicated service, which we vary quarter to quarter in terms of getting feedback from the different teams. What would they love to see in our developer experience improved? What they would love to see in our observability platform improved? We also mix that with deploying some of the platform engineers to spend time with our product engineering teams to really understand and see for themselves how some of those more complex teams with more versatile environments are using the platform parts, and also try to work with them to see if there would be a hotspot of bigger optimizations down the line that we want to prioritize. And it keeps going, right? It's literally, as Kat also explained, it becomes as any other user-facing product. You'll be looking at a number of metrics, obviously ROI for sure, always there, always constant. We want to optimize more and more and more. But on the flip side, we also measure what is the satisfaction of the platform, of the different engineering teams. And then, as I mentioned, we flavor with, let's pick up certain pieces where we are either thinking, do we go left or do we go right? Or let's see what are the biggest opportunities ahead of us, and see with a couple of POCs that we've prepared, how is the adoption of those new features? What is the early feedback? In any organization, regardless of the size, you always have people who are gravitating closer, willing to give a lot more feedback. And then you want to keep those guys close so that you can experiment with them and work together with them to decide on the next steps. That's more on our level. Before that, just put this on, it was also for sure for us adoption, the main metric as we were scaling up. And from there, obviously,
so you start with adoption, and
Yeah.
when, of course, adoption is not meaningful anymore, you start to look at other metrics.
Exactly.
I see a very interesting question from Thiago in the chat, is how do you evaluate the cost benefit of adding changes to a platform currently used by a team? I don't know who wants to pick that one. Kat, Martin, Mike, I don't know who wants to go.
I can go. Or Kat, you go. I saw you come off mute. Go.
No, I was just the room was silent. Go for it, Martin.
I think it depends. I mean, does it mean adding changes to the platform or the value of the platform that's used by a current team? Because I think they're slightly different metrics, if that makes sense. So it's often it comes down to time, which ultimately comes to cost. How much time are you spending doing something and that could be saved if it was moved into the platform and became more consistent and becomes not that team managing it and the platform managing it? And are you just transferring that work, or is there a better way of doing it because it can be used multiple times? I think there is this evaluation of, I want to add something to the platform, but is it actually worth the investment? Or is it actually just better that it's just that one team that use it? And then, you know what, they can just keep doing that because there isn't that value proposition of adding it into the platform. So it depends, because if you lucky to have 100% of people on your platform, which I've never personally got to 100% on the platform, so I'm a little envious when I heard that. But you know, I think it depends either way, because really it's ultimately it comes down to, you know, there's the cost of the infrastructure, whatever, but often that's not going to change dramatically. It's normally down to how much time are you going to save by doing that? And are you just moving the time somewhere else, or is there an actual true time saving by moving or consolidating those things?
Thank you, Martin. Before, I think Boyan mentioned the topic of that when you have at some point to decide between the blue and yellow wall or whatever, you have someone to take the decision, so you escalate. I see now a similar question related instead of the solution stack. So about power dynamics between platform engineering or versus software engineering when it comes to the choice of the solution stacks. I don't know who wants to go. Mike, do you have any advice there?
I think there is absolutely a power dynamic, and that often has to do with how your company's leadership has set up the inter-team communication culture. Sometimes, you know, for the first platform engineering hire, somebody will be hired in and executives might make a big fuss. Oh, hey, we've got somebody from platform engineer. They're going to save us. and that puts them up on a pedestal and may kind of start to coerce other software engineering leaders into following whatever they say is true. Now, if again, they might be doing the right thing, but I think in every situation, it is a collaboration, and understanding what is needed for this team to succeed is important for both the software engineering side and the platform engineering side. Because if the software engineering side of the conversation isn't represented, excuse me, in the platform engineering's roadmap, designs, execution, then there will continue to be conflict and people will be unhappy and nobody will get along. And ultimately the business won't do as well as if those roadblocks weren't there. So going back to kind of Boylan's point, having a clear escalation path of, okay, or even earlier is having the platform engineering kind of charter and purpose and purview very much carved out and saying, here's what you get to decide on, here's what you don't get to decide on and need to escalate or collaborate. It clarifies everything for everyone and reduces those contention points. We'll find other contention points because we're human, but at least those will be kind of sanded away so that way they aren't as sharp, and teams can kind of focus on expressing their needs and their why they need their things to each other, so that way they can both execute to better outcomes. There is a power dynamic, and there always will be. I think it's how do you navigate that and express that as leaders in an organization.
Thank you, Mike. Does any of you actually have experienced that, not power dynamic, but maybe conflict between teams, right? Between, or anyone has
I've
horror
actually
stories to share?
seen more conflict between the teams that are using the platform about how that experience should look like, rather than between the platform engineering team itself and one particular team. So often you'll have two typically very influential. It'll be like the most experienced or the most tenured engineers in the organization that are fighting head to head and expect the platform to behave a different way. And that can be very painful, particularly if it's like we're like the tool choice is a good one. Like, are we going to be MySQL or are we going to be something else? And then it was how we dealt with that was we just had different abstractions for different teams. So some teams care a lot about exactly what fields should be provided and how big it should be and how it connects to things as a database or any sort of thing that you want to provide as a service. Other ones are like, I just want a lot of space to store a thing in. I don't really care about it. And another might be like, I care that it's no SQL because I'm very important. And you can provide those different abstractions and provide those different services on your platform based on priority in your team. And maybe they look the same and maybe you're a little bit nefarious and they're exactly the same under the hood, but the experience that the customer gets at the other end is fine. So you've got to think about clever ways of dealing with that conflict as the platform, rather than, the fights between what platform wants and what the software teams want. I haven't really experienced. They're often, software teams are like, we get it, you're the platform team, you're super overwhelmed, we'll carry on doing what we're doing already, you're just adding a benefit to our lives. So they're quite kind.
Thank you, Kat. I was wondering if, as unfortunately we are heading towards the end of this panel, we don't have many minutes left. I'm thinking from the point of view of a practitioner, of a software architect that is convinced by the idea, I want to learn more on the topic or play more with platform engineering, and maybe is lucky that everything works and he has 100% adoption in his company and nothing to learn and everything works, or be on the total opposite side. But I was wondering if there's something as a practitioner you can do in just a few hours, like let's say half a day, 4 hours, whatever, like in terms of reading a book, say a podcast, watch a series, try something, build something. What would be your advice? I would like each one of you to give some final advice to our audience of what you can build. I don't know who wants to go first. Mike?
Okay, so this might be the most popular, but go talk to your coworkers and find out what pain points they have and what is slowing them down from execution, and see if any of their stories are the same that you have. And then if there is alignment, if there is overlap, spend a little time thinking about how you might solve that, how you might smooth that out for the two of you. because you might both be working on different parts of code bases, you might work on different application stacks, but there may be some commonality. So if you only have an hour, talk to your coworkers, find out what their pain points are, write them down, and talk to more coworkers. And eventually you may have some good ideas of material platform level improvements that you could do if you don't have a platform engineering team yet.
Thank you, Mike. Martin?
I was thinking about this. It's an interesting one. I think I like the, find a commonality with a different team. That's a great approach. I think sometimes it's if you really want to get in there and just spend some time to understand what platform engineering is, because it is many things, but there are commonalities. It's shared infrastructure, common ways of building that, kind of understanding the difference around the CI/CD pipeline tools that you might use. There's a whole raft of things under the covers that you can actually, get a fairly quick view of, to understand how all those things plug together to help make a platform, if that makes sense. So, it's kind of like saying, okay, I want to know what all the Lego bricks are that make up a platform. So I'm going to go and have a look at some of the Lego bricks, because I don't think platform engineering is something you can build in a few hours, but I think you can start to understand the Lego bricks and say, hey, infrastructure as code, maybe internal developer portals, maybe CI/CD tools, maybe shared services, like authorization or whatever. Okay, these are the Lego bricks. I'm really interested in this Lego brick. I'm going to schedule some time later to look at that one, and then schedule some time to look at a different Lego brick, because I think it makes the conversations easier the other way. Then when you want to engage with a platform engineering team, you have at least some understanding of those Lego bricks and the conversation becomes easier.
Thank you, Martin. Boyan?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would think about it, right? I would say the best thing a practitioner can do, especially if he's new to the field and want to learn more, is go outside and ask people with experience who have been through much. So many companies have done so much in that space by now. Learn from their failures, learn from their successes. I think that's years distilled in a, 1 hour lunch break, which could propel you and your team much faster than trying and failing on your own and, so to speak, trying to reinvent the hot water. If I have limited time, that's what I would do.
I think Renata's in mute, but I can guess he was saying, what's your opinion, Kat? And I
Yeah.
will build on those with maybe some
Sorry.
practical locations for those areas. So one source of great info is all of the platform con recordings. So there are loads and loads of talks on there of lots of different topics, worth a look. If you're on Slack, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation have a really good Slack channel with platform engineering as one of their sub areas, and they have coffee meetups that you can sign up to, and they're very, very chatty about all of the things that they're interested in platform engineering, and it's not just AI. And then that group has published a white paper on platform maturity called the Platform Maturity Model, which is really good at plotting where you are on that journey. And they've got descriptions of each of those levels and what it looks like. And then it can help you figure out as an organization, where are we on the platform adoption journey? Is it very, very early days? Is there actually a platform already existing in the organization that I've just not realized or called it that name before? And where might I want to go? So there's a whole trove of information in there, and they'll probably find people like Boyan suggested that have done this before and are very, very willing to talk about the successes, the failures, what's worked and what hasn't.
Thank you. I don't know. We have really less than 1 minute before closing, but I would like to give the chance to. There was a final open question that I'd like to just briefly quick to, if someone has any ideas. Do we always have to aim for 100% adoption, or as we mentioned before, or is okay not to have it? Boolean answers. Who wants to give it? Martin?
Yeah, I actually typed a response to that because I didn't think we were going to have time, but I was saying it's fine not to have 100%. I think it depends on the organization and what the overall goal is, but I think as you're maturing towards, an overall platform. I think sometimes there are just valid business reasons or valid technical reasons why either the platform isn't ready for that yet, or that outcome can't be achieved, and that is absolutely fine. I think as long as both the engineering team or the product team and the platform team, they both need to be aware, they both need to understand, and they both need to know where their responsibilities lie. So I think, don't make that decision in isolation. Do it with the platform team. Make sure it's understood by leadership too. I think if you get all those things in place, then yeah, it is absolutely fine, because there is always going to be things that maybe the platform isn't ready for yet, or the platform will never do, because it just doesn't make any sense. And for the life of the product, it will be the product's responsibility to maintain that. So I think, yes, it is okay, but the visibility of the decision and having that decision logged and reviewing that decision regularly, they're the key things to making that successful, so that it doesn't become like a fighting point or a friction point down the line.
Thank you so much, Martin. Unfortunately, you really ran out of time. We have reached the time allowed for this session. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just a couple of words about a couple of events coming up this autumn. There's a QCon San Francisco next October, as usual. QCon London is going to be next April, but we have as well a conference in Europe, InfoQ Dev Summit next October in Munich, where we are going to discuss as well platform engineers, one of the topics. Thanks again to all the panelists and to our sponsor, Harness, and have an excellent rest of the day. Goodbye.